This week I am back in Chicago and I have the opportunity to do a first look review of the Mazda CX-50 Hybrid. Now this is an all-new powertrain for Mazda, and I'm going to give you a secret. It's not theirs. So what I want to do in this video is I want to talk a little bit about what's under the hood. I'm going to talk about some of the differences between this and the regular CX-50. Then we're just going to go straight into the 5 good things and 5 bad things. And yeah, I'll give you some driving impressions. So my name is Jill Ciminillo with Pickup Truck Plus SUV Talk. Let's take a closer look at the Mazda CX-50 Hybrid right now. All right, I just want to dive right into the powertrain because you will notice this is not your typical Mazda Skyactiv powertrain. Nope, this powertrain actually belongs to Toyota. So the Mazda CX-50 Hybrid was developed in conjunction with Toyota. This is a 2.5 liter naturally aspirated engine, and it's mated to 3 electric motors. And this right here is the same powertrain you are going to find in the Toyota RAV4 Hybrid, right down to the horsepower. So combined horsepower output for this vehicle is 219. Yeah, so I find that really interesting because Mazda has dipped its toe into the waters with electric vehicles with the MX-30, and that didn't go well. And they haven't ever really done a hybrid. But if you're going to do a hybrid, what are you going to do? You're going to go to the company that makes the best hybrid powertrain system out there, and yeah, you're going to collaborate with them. And that's exactly what Mazda did. So I'm going to have driving impressions on this in a little bit, but I'm going to say this is actually a really smooth, quiet, and well done hybrid powertrain. And yeah, if you can't find a Toyota RAV4 hybrid, this is a really good alternative. All right, now that we have talked about the powertrain, let's jump into some of the design differences between the hybrid and the gasoline model. And I'm going to be honest with you, it's not a drastic difference. One of the biggest things you're going to notice is this lower bumper area right here is designed a little bit differently, and a lot of that has to do with the hybrid powertrain. You're also going to notice some more cladding on the, over the wheels and under the doors. Also has to do with the hybrid powertrain. Ride height is a little bit higher, but I'm going to be honest, I don't think you're going to notice that. It doesn't really look higher. And outside of that, another one of the big differences is going to be you have some different wheel options here on the hybrid. And then finally, yeah, you're going to have some hybrid badging. So this is what the hybrid badging looks like on the side for the Mazda CX-50 Hybrid. And then when you come around to the back, yeah, you also have some hybrid badging right here. It's frankly really subtle, and again, the changes you're going to see on the hybrid versus the non-hybrid aren't really that big. So yeah, let's just get right to it, and we will go inside and start talking about our likes and our dislikes. Let's just dive right into the like list. And you know what? I'm going to dig right into the nitty-gritty of pricing, because I know that's something that people often ask about, and they think cars are too expensive these days, which, okay, justifiably they are. But I think Mazda has done a really good job with the pricing on the Mazda CX-50 Hybrid, because they kind of nestled it between the 2.5S and the 2.5 Turbo. So it hits that sweet spot of pricing that's not too cheap but not too expensive. Plus you get a lot of amenities on this vehicle. And so I think the price is justified. So base option for the CX-50 Hybrid is going to be about $34,000. And if you want to go all in and you want to do the top tier, I think they're calling it the Premium Plus, yeah, that's going to be around $41,000. Now, what's really interesting here is this is pretty much exactly the same price as the Toyota RAV4 Hybrid. So you've got the same powertrain as the Toyota RAV4 Hybrid, and you have similar pricing. Now, I'll be honest with you, I love the Toyota RAV4 Hybrid, but I have to say, the styling on the CX-50 is more my jam. it is more my jam. So if I'm going to spend the same amount of money and I'm going to get similar amenities on both vehicles, I'm probably going to come right here to the Mazda CX-50 Hybrid. Yeah. So I'm gonna start with that. And then, you know what? We're just gonna go right back to the hybrid powertrain. I love the hybrid powertrain. I think it was great in the Toyota RAV4, and Mazda has done a really good implementation putting it in the CX-50. Now, what I find to be very interesting about this hybrid powertrain versus the RAV4 hybrid powertrain is this actually gets less fuel economy. And I think that has to do with the sporting dynamics of this vehicle versus that vehicle. Mazda has designed this vehicle to be a little bit sporty, and the Toyota RAV4 is just more functional. So you're looking at 38 miles per gallon EPA estimated combined fuel economy in the CX-50 hybrid versus 40 in the Toyota RAV4 hybrid. And yeah, we're going to talk a little bit more about that later, and I'll be honest with you, it's going to be on my do not like list. So I think they've priced it right, and this powertrain is smooth, it's quiet, and it's peppy in all of the right places. I've done a lot of city driving, and I've hit it into EV mode, and it stays there pretty well. Going onto the highway, I have no problems accelerating into traffic, no problems merging, no problems passing, and this is smooth and quiet. And true to the Toyota hybrid powertrain, you don't really have a lot of transition between when the engine is on and when the engine is not on. So they've done a great job with the transitions. This is very, very quiet, smooth, and well-powered. So those, pricing and powertrain, first two things on the like list. Now, the next thing that I really like on the Mazda CX-50 Hybrid is going to have to be the overall fit and finish. I think Mazda has done a really nice job with the details, from the stitching on the door and the dash to the piping and the stitching on the seats to just, I don't know, the overall design of the vehicle is really well done, especially on the interior. Even the back seats have really nice details on them, and then you have an available panoramic moonroof. So fit and finish is just, I think, very much above class in the Mazda CX-50 Hybrid, and overall looks really good. And you know what? While we are here, I'm gonna include this in fit and finish because I'm gonna include this all as part of number 3. But you do have wireless Apple CarPlay as well as wireless charging. And I really like the location of this wireless charger. It's easy to access your phone. We've seen some Mazdas and some other vehicles that have put their wireless charging kind of behind the cup holders, and it's really awkward to be able to access. And so I like the location, and I will say for my short city drives and suburban jaunts, this did not overheat my phone. So wasn't in here for 3 hours to give it a really good test, but in general, it doesn't overheat your phone. It just charges it, and the location is good. So fit and finish, wireless charging, wireless Apple CarPlay, and Android Auto are the number 3 thing that I like on the Mazda CX-50. Next, because this is the top tier trim of the CX-50 Hybrid, you do have what I like to call marriage-saving features. And yes, you can tell my husband and I were both sitting in this vehicle because I had the heat jacked up to 80 and my husband had the AC on at 68. So I really like the fact that you can accommodate both front passengers with very disparate temperature settings, and you also have heated and cooled seats to be able to really key into your temperature settings. And I do call those marriage saving features because, yeah, my husband and I never agree on the temperature. One other marriage saving feature that the CX-50 Hybrid has in this trim is your memory settings for your seat. So if you have a husband and wife team or mother-daughter team who is going to be driving this vehicle, you can set 1 and 2 for the different drivers, and it just makes it easy to get back behind the wheel without having to do a lot of adjustments and corrections for side mirrors and seat settings. Now, okay, obviously you're going to have to reset this mirror right here, but your memory seats is going to adjust you know, this as well as your regular seating position. So marriage-saving features are always going to be on my like list. Now, for the final thing on my like list, I'm going to step back outside of the vehicle. And you know what? I'm just going to do a quick pan of the interior again, because the biggest thing that I really like about the Mazda CX-50 in general and the hybrid specifically is going to be the fact that I just really like this design. I think that Mazda has done a great job kind of making this more elegant and having it look a lot more sleek than some of the other vehicles in the lineup. And by the way, they do an amazing job with their overall design. But this one, for whatever reason, to me just says that it is well done, elegant, and really capable, both in a city situation, a suburban situation, and in some mild off-roading situations. So I don't know. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but personally, I think that the CX-50 is one of the best designed vehicles in the Mazda lineup. All right, it is now time for me to jump into the things that I don't like about the Mazda CX-50 Hybrid. And while I generally like the driving position, I feel like I have good visibility out of all the windows, you know, plenty of distance between my breastbone and the steering wheel and the airbag. And I feel good in the driver's seat. The driver's seat itself kind of sucks. I'm not gonna lie. And I did not spend a lot of time here. So I didn't take this to Indianapolis. I didn't do a road trip. I've done city trips, and I have gone out to the suburbs a couple times. And these seats are just really firm and hard. And like right where my tailbone is, it feels like there's a bump sticking up into like that area. And it just, for me, is very uncomfortable. And what's really funny is I had my husband in the passenger seat during one of my trips out to the suburbs, and I asked him, I'm like, so what do you think of the seats? And he was like, well, I'm bigger than you are. I'm like, you're not answering my question. What do you think of the seats? He's like, well, it's fine. And I'm like, so you don't find them uncomfortable? You don't find them firm? Like, how do you feel about the seats? And he goes, well, they're a little firm. And I said, are they comfortable? And he goes, well, I think they would loosen up over time. So I didn't get the answer that I was trying to get out of him, but I got the feeling that he didn't like the seats either. So maybe this is just something that will loosen up over time, but my initial impression of the seat comfort is not good. I don't think I would enjoy sitting in these seats for 3 hours. And I'll be honest with you, I don't remember this happening for me in other Mazda vehicles. So this it kind of surprised me a little bit. So seat comfort is going to be the first thing that I really don't like on the Mazda CX-50 Hybrid. Now the next thing is going to be this right here. And it's not the infotainment system, it's the location of the screen. And I have to feel like the location of the screen is kind of an after the fact kind of thing, because initially Mazda had designed this infotainment system to not be a touchscreen at all. But when wireless Apple CarPlay came out and people complained about the fact that you couldn't have a touchscreen, what they did is they made Apple CarPlay a touchscreen. So the native navigation system, if you go into communications, radio, Sirius XM, that kind of thing, that is not a touchscreen. You have to use the little dial touch controller down here. But in Apple CarPlay, you can actually like reach up and touch things to change it, and that's just a really awkward location to be able to touch. And I did find, though, that touching the screen was easier than cranking through all of the different menu items to get to different, because like you have to go jink, 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 you know, to get through the different items if you're using the wheel. And so I like the fact that you could use Apple CarPlay as a touchscreen, but that's just a very, very awkward reach. And I wish they brought it forward, moved it down. I don't know. This screen needs to be someplace else if you're going to make anything on it. Touchscreen. Okay, for the next thing on the do not like list, remember when I was talking about the EPA fuel economy bringing in at 38 miles per gallon in combined driving? Yeah, clearly I did not get that. I would say the highest that I averaged during my test week was 27 miles per gallon, and that was after driving on the highway. Well, I didn't do a lot of highway driving this week. I did mostly city driving, because, yeah, I live in a city, and I was just very unimpressed with the fuel economy. Now, I will point out that there are only 1,400 miles on this test vehicle, so perhaps it is still in the breaking in phase, but 27 miles per gallon, or 26.9 as we have it right now, is a far cry from 38 miles per gallon. So I don't know what happened there, but I wasn't driving like a jerk. I will be honest, I did hit this button, this EV button in the city, so I wasn't driving like a jerk. And I just, yeah, so, didn't like that. I'll be curious when there are more miles on this vehicle if the fuel economy gets better. I don't know the answer to that right now. Okay, for the final two things on my do not like list, I am going to focus again on this screen. And it's not really the screen or the location of the screen. It is actually going to be the backup camera. Yeah, it's gonna be the backup camera. Now, you may or may not know this, but it is federally mandated that any new vehicle have a backup camera. And doesn't say how good that backup camera has to be, just has to have a backup camera. And sometimes I feel like this is where automakers cheap out. And they do the minimum. And I feel like Mazda has kind of done the minimum here. So I'm in my alley and I am going to back into my garage. So first off, did you see what happened there? The screen went like this. It got smaller and, the definition isn't great. But here's what I really don't like about it. Okay, I'm backing up straight and now I'm turning. And did you see what happened there? There are no dynamic guidelines. And then there's no around view camera. So when I switch back to the, drive, it disappears. And this is just not a great camera. There are no dynamic guides. There are no, you do have a little bit of the ladder there that is showing you where you can, how far away you are from something. But this is a poor implementation. And then, it doesn't do very well in the dark either. So it's cloudy, it's gloomy, and it's a little bit dark in my garage right now, and it just kind of fuzzes everything out. So this to me, I feel like Mazda just phoned this in, and they could have done a much better job. And, by the way, they do a better job, and that is going to be the final thing that I don't like. The turbo version of the 2.5 turbo version of the Mazda CX-50 has an around view camera. And it is a much better camera than this. Yet, the top tier trim of the hybrid model doesn't have an available around view camera. For a top tier trim, that to me is a huge miss. That's a big miss. That's a big miss. So don't like any of this, and don't like the fact that there is not an around view camera offered on the hybrid model. That to me is a thumbs down. That is a thumbs down. All right, now I want to get into some brief driving impressions. And I say brief because I'll be honest with you, you've heard most of my spiel at this point. I like the powertrain, I like my driving position, and the seats are, well, uncomfortable. But what I haven't talked about is how this vehicle handles in an urban situation like Chicago. So I'm on one of my favorite streets that I use to test drive cars. It has a lot of speed bumps and it has a lot of potholes. And while this has a firm suspension with more of a sporting driving dynamics, it smooths out a lot of the biggest bumps. So I really appreciate the fact that this can be comfortable on a road like Cortland in Chicago, and it is relatively easy to maneuver in city situations. Along with that, ooh, big truck. Along with that, I like the fact that this has more petite proportions. So I'm going down this very narrow two-way street and came across a Ford F-150 who clearly could not move over any further, but I was able to maneuver around him, and I appreciate that because this is where I live. So this is a great SUV with some functional space in the back to have, carry gear, carry your suitcases, take a road trip, do the things, go to IKEA, go to the groceries, do the things. Yet it still has some nice petite proportions for a city environment, so it's really easy to maneuver. I was going to a hair appointment in Lincoln Park. If you're familiar with Chicago, you know that this is kind of a very busy, congested area with fewer parking spaces, and they're all parallel parking spaces. And my husband said, oh, well, you should take our car, the GTI. He's like, you'll be able to park it better. And I'm like, I think I'm gonna be just fine in the CX-50 just because of its compact proportions. I mean, it's not overly small, but it's not overly big either. And yeah, I was totally fine. Found a great parking spot, parallel park, super easy. So I like how it drives. I like the driving position. I like the handling. It does well in a city environment, and I like the petite proportions. Beyond that, I'm just going to start getting repetitive. So if I had to sum up the Mazda CX-50 Hybrid, I would say it's a great, compact, comfortable vehicle, except for the seats, and it does really well in both city and suburban situations. I would really like to see how the fuel economy does over time, but in the short term, it's just so-so. All right, that is what I have for you today in the Mazda CX-50 Hybrid. Thanks for watching, and I will see you down the road.